Shalom uvracha. I would like to first take this opportunity to thank everyone for taking the time to gather and learn and grow together. It's not something that's taken for granted. And Baruch Hashem, during these times, we have abundance of shiurim, abundance of wisdom. So I take again this opportunity to thank each and every one for giving me the chizuk, giving me the opportunity to rise and grow together and Be'ezrat Hashem better ourselves. So just as a recap of what we have learned in the last shiur, we addressed this fantastic concept. And in a nutshell, first of all, the consciousness of the dynamic. It is bilateral dynamic, this fight between two polar forces, one that is by default what we call the Amalek, this gravity that drags us down, and our obligation as the Moshe Rabbeinu that sits and rises and needs to fight and needs to develop his emunah, to raise our hands and not let our actions, not let our progress collapse or fall in the influence the electricity of what we call the machloket between people, and on the other, address also and use the ability of the koach hatochacha, the rebuke and the positive criticism, which was represented by Chur, as we explained in our shiur. And we said that basically a person can tap into these kochot, these strengths that are in each and every one of us, in our spiritual DNA, and lies as an effort, as a koach that we have to use and we have to implement in our lives to eradicate the machloket, eradicate the conflict, the disputes, and on the other hand, also bring awareness of what needs to be changed. And this through the two fundamental diberot, commandments that we heard directly from Hashem. The first one, which is Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem your God, which represents the proactive interaction. I am Hashem your God, which is the effort of Aaron HaKohen, versus the Lo Yeh Lecha Elokim Acherim, you will not have another God but me, which is the negative, what we should not be doing, and which has the formula and the structure of what we call constructive criticism. And this is, at the end of the day, in our Shema Israel. So when a person says Shema Israel with the proper kavanah, with the proper thought and the proper awareness, what he's doing every time a person says Shema Israel, beyond what we have discussed in the previous shiurim, he turns up, wakes up the power, his power of shalom, his ability of doing shalom, of unity, but also the ability to have the clarity, the speech, clarity and power to verbalize and address constructive criticism. So until now is what we have learned in the last shiur. So if we recap in a nutshell, what we've addressed how a person can wake up and bring out all the berachot, all the blessings that's in him. We discussed, based on last shiur, how to annul and control and diffuse the I don't know if diffuse is the right word, but maybe it's in French, diffuse means to stop, to stop a bomb from exploding. But so we basically, through the avodah of the shalom and the tochacha, a person has the ability to capture and eliminate the influence or the power of what we call the kelala, the curse, that also lives and resides in each and every one of us. And that's how a person can really control his beracha, control his blessing, his abundance, control his growth, and make sure that from within him, there's no destructive energy or darkness or bad vibe that is being emanated or that is contaminating the person. Now, there's also one element that we're going to focus on tonight, very important, is the outside influence. So until now, we've spoken about what a person needs to do to protect himself and empower himself. However, Shlomo HaMelech in Kohelet, Perek Yud, addresses the influence, the direct influence people can have on our lives, direct impact. And he addresses two types of people in our surrounding that can be detrimental or that can hurt ourselves, not because we're good and they're bad, but because we allowed it through some foolishness and through some careless behavior on our part. And here Shlomo HaMelech addresses a chacham, a smart man, a man that has wisdom, but doesn't care so much. He compartmentalizes what's important to him, and what's not, he allows himself to act in a foolish way. So Shlomo HaMelech addresses the first problem. He says, and that's in Perek Yud, Pasuk Gimel, וגם בדרך כששחל הולך ליבו חסר, ואמר לכל שחלו. Says Shlomo HaMelech, based on our rabbis and the understanding of our rabbis, that a person sometimes thinks that he's smarter than everyone. And therefore, he thinks that the people around him are not that smart. And therefore, he thinks that since, I'm smarter than everyone, then I can be foolish, because who's going to pick up on it? Nobody's really looking. Nobody really is going to pick up that I do that is not so proper. Says Shlomo HaMelech, you should know that doesn't matter how smart you are, there's always somebody smarter than you. And there's always somebody that's going to pick up on your action and will use that action against you. So Shlomo HaMelech comes and tells us we have to be very careful, first of all, not to behave in a foolish way, and to be very sensitive and careful all the time, but also not to, how can I say? The right word is disregard or belittle the impact of the people around us, because there will always be someone that will pick up on your actions, no matter what. And that will be used against you. First, and we're going to dive in a little bit into that concept. And then there's another type where, says Shlomo HaMelech, a person rises and becomes righteous. He grows in chokhmah, socially, financially, politically. He becomes advisor, he becomes powerful. However, says Shlomo HaMelech, he forgets the koach that resides, the nature, the strength that resides with allow him to become that great. And says Shlomo HaMelech that once a person forgets which koach, which essence within him brought him to that greatness, then he is vulnerable to the jealousy, to the ain hara, to the lashon hara, of the people, of the fools that are surrounding him. So now it's not the problem of the chacham, of the somebody that's smarter than you that can affect you. It's the default negativity of the fools that are around you that will just hurt you. Why is that? If we dive into the two situations, on one hand, you have someone that underestimates people and thinks that he knows better and thinks that he's worth more, and therefore will allow himself to judge us and to create levels. I am higher, you are lower, that's a judgment. And therefore you're not worthy, you're not smart enough. And that lead the person to think that he's invincible. That's the ego of the person through his chokhmah. He has chokhmah, he's wise, he's smart. But his ego translates this chokhmah into invincibility and underestimates of the people around him. Misjudgment. Using the judgment the wrong way. Judging people, categorizing people, labeling people the wrong way. Says Shlomo HaMelech, be careful. There's always someone in the crowd that will be smarter than you. And because you chose to use your chokhmah and your judgment to belittle the crowd and judge the crowd as if they're not worthy or they're not smart enough, midah keneged midah, you will bring somebody with judgment and with chokhmah, but that will take you down just because this is what you applied on your surrounding. Tremendous message. The second scenario, the Kohelet Rabbah, the Midrash, brings this pasuk from Shlomo HaMelech and tells us this refers to Zechariah. Zechariah was at the time of the king Yoash and Yehoiada. And Zechariah, just so you understand, was the son-in-law of the king. He was a Kohen. He was a Navi. He was a prophet. He was a Dayan. He was a judge. A tremendous, tremendous mind. So he had it all. Politically speaking, spiritually speaking, power, money, he had everything. However, our rabbis say he forgot that what brought him to that level was his humility. Zechariah grew to become who he was because he was humble. And that humility, or the rabbis say, he lost. And he started judging the people instead of them closer through his humility. That caused him, the story, it's in the Devarim, Divrei Hayamim, Bet Perek Kaf Dalet. So the Nach tells us that he was taken by the king and he was killed. They lynched him. And the rabbis ask, where did they kill him? Because he was a Kohen. Did they kill him in the section of the Israel or in the sections of the Levi? So the rabbis say, no, he was killed in the sections of the Kohanim, in the holiest section of the Bet HaMikdash. And they had so much resentment towards him that they didn't even cover his blood. A basic mitzvah that we apply on the animals. So here, another flaw that brings vulnerability to him is his loss of anava. And what does that trigger? When you think that you're great, and you shine with your greatness, because you have greatness, naturally our rabbis teach us the nature of human, the natures of the fool. The Rambam says most of people behave like fools. They don't behave with their neshama, they don't behave with their chokhmah, they behave instinctively, they behave emotionally, they behave foolishly, fully. So our rabbis tell us that the default reaction, the default Amalek, the default darkness that sits in the fool, wakes up. And suddenly, the person is exposed to Lashon Hara. He's exposed to bad mouthing, whether it's true or not. Motzi Shem Ra, stories are going to come out. Nonsense. Jealousy. Suddenly, all his actions are scrutinized. Ayin Hara, the evil eye. All of this is now exposed in front of that person. And says Shlomo HaMelech, the person will collapse. As we saw with Zechariah HaNavi. And once again, we see that both of those mistakes, both of those flaws come from this fundamental chet ha'egel, this illusion that we have and that we believe and we think that we have the right to judge. Again, the same thing, the entitlement to judge. So a person basically says nobody's smart and therefore I can do whatever I want. The outcome is somebody smart will come and show you and expose the full actions of you that you do. The other one, the person is great, the person is big, the person is smart, but he doesn't have this humility. He doesn't have that, he forgets his makom, he forgets the power that generated all these blessings, all this success. So he triggers the awakening of people that will remind him, you think you made it on your own, so we will use the negativity that's in us. Subconsciously they do it, to remind you that it's not you. So Shlomo HaMelech and our rabbis say, okay, so then what is the solution? What should we do? So we have Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is the perfect example, is the role model that we all have to emulate. It's the Moshe Rabbeinu that we addressed many times in the Shiurim in the past, that resides in each and every one of us. And Moshe is defined in the Torah once. Moshe is not called Moshe HaTzadik, not Moshe HaChacham. It's called Moshe, the Torah says, and Hashem says it himself, Anav Mikol Adam. The Anava. Anava is humility. And Shlomo HaMelech tells us, when a person rises, when a person grows, when a person shines, it is his obligation to make sure that he is more and more expressing and showing and sharing with his surrounding his humility. And if you look at Moshe Rabbeinu, lehavdil from the Chacham that we just addressed, that has this mix of Chokhmah and of wickedness, the Chokhmah and the judgment, right? On one end you're a Chacham, and on the other you're entitled to judge. Or you judge that you're better, that you made it, and you deserve it, or you judge your surrounding by thinking that they're not worthy of your chokhmah, and therefore they're harmless. If you look at Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe Rabbeinu never judged. Nowhere in the Torah you will find the behavior. May come and say, what do you mean, Rabbi? What do you mean? What are you talking about? We just learned last week, Parashat Korach, how Moshe Rabbeinu went and stood before Korach, Datan, Aviram, and prayed to Hashem, they have to be punished. He judged. The answer is no. We learned it also last week at the end of the shiur. We brought the Maharal of Prague that says that when a person chooses machloket, chooses scission, chooses separation, chooses distance, the person judges himself. Hashem doesn't judge him. So Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have to judge anyone. Korach judged himself. Datan, Aviram, they judged themselves. The 250 Chachamim that were with them judged themselves. So Moshe Rabbeinu didn't need to judge. Anav, what's the definition of Anav? So the Chachmei Musar explain, the humble is not the one that says, I don't know when he knows. The humble is to say, I know when I know. I don't know when I don't know. And I will rebuke when it's time to rebuke. The problem is that people don't like that. People are very irritated when they see someone that can be tough, that can be soft, that can be blunt, or that can be giving. But that's the definition of Anav. Anava means lehakir et mekomcha, to know your place, to know when to open your mouth and to know when to close your mouth, to know when to act and to know when to stay passive. And that was Moshe Rabbeinu. He was the humblest man, but he knew how to stand firm with Am Yisrael. He knew when to pray. He knew when to move them. He knew when to advocate for them. And he knew where to take a step back and let the person that decides to judge himself be. And this is why we don't find German praise for Korach, because there is no place, there's no room for prayers. When you pray, you advocate on behalf of someone in front of Hashem, and you say, listen, this person said, please Hashem, forgive. But when a person chooses the machloket, chooses the dispute, he judges himself. This is Gehinam. So he doesn't even give Hashem the opportunity to judge him. For Moshe to come and plead. A fantastic, fantastic, fantastic message. So comes Shlomo Melech and tells us, if you want to protect yourself from your surrounding, if you want to make sure that the darkness, that the Amalek that brings the humanity down, that negative energy that surrounds people do not affect you, you need two things. Number one, make sure that you give the proper kavod to each and every one, and know that everyone is smart. Mikol melamedai iskalti. We learn from everyone. And from our student, more. Give everyone the right to share his wisdom with you, to enrich us. When a person shares some chokhmah, he enriches us. Instead of judging them and categorizing them and labeling them. That's again, this is the Amalek, this is the Korach of Amalek that sits, the Chet HaEgel that sits in each and every one of us. And the other one is not to think that you deserve it, you made it. Right? I am the one that deserves this because I make it. I did it all myself. What do you mean? I worked hard, I did this, I did that. It's me. And because it's me, I know better. And because I know better, I can rebuke. Come Shlomo HaMelech said, no. When you behave like this, you put yourself in vulnerable place. And you open the gates of hell. You open the gates of jealousy. You open the gates of Ain Hara. You open the gates of Lashon Hara. Terrible, terrible. For what? However, if you are Anav, and if you know when to help, to be helped, when to give, when to allow to be given, when to grow, when to separate because it's not the right influence, at that point, you neutralize, you cancel, our rabbis teach us, all of this negativity around you. And now, the path is free. You have no more negative impact from your surrounding on you. So now you can really empower your life and inject and yield the beracha based on what we've said. Now, what we need to remind ourselves also is that this interaction, this behavior, whether we sit on the crowd side or on the chacham side, because kulanu chachamim, we say, right, in the Agadah, we are all chachamim, we are all nevonim, we're all very smart. Everybody, and that's the emet. If you know where to find the chokhmah, you will find it in each and every one of us. Everyone. However, it is important to remind ourselves that this interaction has an impact that comes from our actions, from our emotions, and from our thoughts. So when a person decides, and we address it in the shiur in Kohelet today, to hurt someone, then he's hurting himself. When someone decides to speak lashon hara about someone, to spread venom about someone, says Shlomo HaMelech, that venom comes and poison him simply because of that beautiful concept that is called Elohim, Hashem, that has given us on one end the power of creation, but that also resides and lives within creation. So he created this interaction, this midah keneged midah. It's a boomerang effect. So Rabotai, now we need to make sure not only to elevate ourselves and grow in every aspect of our lives, control the kelala, choke the negativity that's within us, but also it is our responsibility and our obligation to make sure that we don't expose ourselves to problems. We don't expose ourselves to the negativity that surrounds us. So when somebody gets hurt by his surrounding, the only blame is himself. Or because he didn't give them enough credit, or because he completely exposed his greatness and it triggered all that negative feelings that sits and lives within the hearts of people. The Torah tells us it is our responsibility. We cannot point our fingers at nobody but at ourselves, which in itself solves a great problem. The problem of, it's your fault, it's you, machloket, balagan, problems, is a simple control of ourselves. So I want to wish every one of you Shabbat Shalom. I love you all. We should continue to grow. And once again, I want to tell each and every one of you, thank you. Thank you for the koach and the chizuk that you give me, and for the wisdom that you bring to me by allowing me to prepare those shiurim and share it with you. Shabbat Shalom u'mevorach, and may we all enjoy a peaceful, enlightful, a happy Shabbat with every one of our beloved ones. Shabbat Shalom.